How to monitor HTTP communication in Eclipse. Basically, HTTP communications will be monitored using by TCP IP Monitor, and we will see how we can set up TCP IP Monitor in Eclipse. Eclipse has a TCP IP Monitor view that comes in very handy if you are interested in watching the HTTP communication between a browser and your web application. Basically, it listens on port on your machine where Eclipse is running, and it forwards that request onto destination host and port. Tomcat typically runs on port 8080 when I fire up a project on my local machine. So I have the TCP IP monitor listen on port 8081 and forward the request to port 8080 of the local host. By listening to 8081 and forwarding to 8080, the TCP IP monitor grabs and displays the request going to the server and the response is coming back from the server. It can display headers which can be very useful when trying to track down difficult issues and web application. It is also very useful if you ever need to analyze something like SOAP communication. Here I give example for Tomcat server, but whatever server we can monitor services. For example, that web service is not working locally, also we can connect web service with the SOAP request and SOAP response using authentication. Okay, so I give a small introduction for that, but I want to explain in pictures way. See, this is my application flow. So this is my HTTP communication URL. So generally without using TCP monitor, how our application will be? So application using email service where it will have a receiving request and sending the communication to the user via email. So if I want to see the request and response for the email service, how request is going, how response is coming from that email service in SOAP XML, we can use a TCP IP monitor. See, this is TCP IP monitor. So for TCP IP monitor, what it will be, you can see the difference between this picture and without using TCP IP monitor. See here, TCP IP monitor looks like a broker between email service and application. So TCP IP monitor, so before sending whatever request to the email service, that request will be monitored or it will be displayed, and it will send that request to the email service, and again it will receive the response whatever it is coming from the email service to the TCP IP monitor, and it will log the response and it will give it to the application. So that request and response is going via TCP IP monitor. So whenever it is going to via TCP IP monitor, it will log the request and response for us. So actually, before going to use the TCP IP monitor, actual URL, for example, my email service actual URL is this one, but if I want to use a TCP IP monitor, this is my URL for that, because here we are not connecting to actual email service directly. So we are creating dummy port for TCP IP monitor where we are setting in our local host. So that TCP IP monitor will have an actual URL of email service. So our application will be connected to the monitor URL where we have a configuration details for TCP IP monitor. So this 7070 is just a dummy port. So just for TCP IP monitor URL port we are giving. We are monitoring email service with the port 7070. Instead of actual URL, we'll use monitor URL where we have a given actual URL. Start the application and try to hit monitor URL. See, monitor URL will take request and hit the actual URL. From actual service, it will get the response. So a request and the response transfer will be happening through TCP IP Monitor. See how I am creating TCP IP monitor. This is my TCP IP monitor where we have a preference in Eclipse. I need to create the TCP IP monitor by clicking on add button. So I told you, right, in TCP IP monitor we have to give actual email service details. So I am giving host name. This is my email service host name, and this is port 4562 is my port number. So for TCP IP monitor port is 7070, where we have a dummy port for TCP IP monitor. So this one configured it. So before going to configure, right, we have to start the server for TCP IP monitor, otherwise it will not see this is started. We can see the status started, otherwise, right, we cannot use. So if we want to see the request and response for TCP IP console, we have a show view, right? There we have to select a TCP IP monitor. So this is our parallel to the console. We have a TCP IP monitor where we can see our request and response to actual email service. See, after hitting, right, we can able to see the request and response like this. So basically we'll think what is exactly TCP IP monitor. We have any option to use real examples except monitoring? Yes. Many people, right, what they do, instead of having actual database details, they will create a TCP IP monitor. Even for databases also will happen. So this is a brief description for TCP IP monitor.